What's up, guys? Henry here, and today I'm going to be making some venison chili. I made this a couple times now, and I got a pretty decent recipe for it, so I just kind of wanted to show you guys what I got going on. So for my veggies, I got some green bell peppers, some deli onions, kidney beans, 1 can of diced tomato, 1 can of puree tomato. Then I got all my seasonings over here, chili powder, obviously, thyme, cumin, cayenne pepper, some bay leaves, garlic, coriander, paprika, rosemary, and then all my celery. And then on the meat side of things, I got a couple packs of ground venison. This was actually given to me from a friend of mine. This wasn't from the deer I got. But these are some braised venison neck roast that I had in my freezer. So it's just like some braised pulled meat, but I'm going to throw that in there. And then I always throw a little bit of Italian pork sausage in there. This is mild. I would have preferred, usually I get hot sausage, but they didn't have any. So I'm just going to throw that in there instead. And then this guy right here, it's a little frozen still. I just pulled it out of the freezer. But that's some venison bone broth that I had made. So I just want to talk about that for a second real quick because it's awesome. It's a great base for like any type of soups or sauces or gravies or anything like that. So what I did after I got my deer, I cleaned all the meat off of it, and I saved all the bones. And then once I was done with all the, packaging up all the meat and everything, I took the bones and threw them on a cookie tray, and I roasted them in the oven on real high heat, like 400 or 500 degrees, 450, something like that. Put them in there and just cranked up the heat and roasted them until they were like a dark brown, not burnt, but like a real dark, like chocolate brown kind of color. Roasted the crap out of them. And then after that, I just threw them in a big pot with a lot of water, and then some white onions, celery, and carrots, basically mirepoix. And just for the veggies, I just like rough chopped them up, left the skins right on the onions and everything, and the skins on the carrots is fine, and the leaves right on the celery. Just throw all of it in the pot with the water and the roasted bones and some garlic. And then I boiled it for the longer the better, at least probably 6 to 8 hours. But when I made it, I think I actually let it go overnight. Like I put it on at night, and I just kept the heat real low, just very slight simmer. You don't really want like a rolling boil. And I simmered it all night, overnight, for like 12 hours. And then the next morning, cut the heat off, and while it's still hot, you run it through a colander, and that just obviously gets all the bones out, and then all the veggies, which are pretty much going to be like mush by that point. But you filter all that crap out of it, and then you put it in the fridge in a container, put it in the fridge overnight and let it completely cool down. And then you come back the next day. So you can see this is like a 3-day process. But you come back the next day, and there'll be a big fat cap on the top. It'll be like a big, it almost looks like a Frisbee. It'll cover the whole top of the container, and it'll probably be a 1/2 inch or 1 inch thick or whatever. And you can fish that out of there. That's good if you want to save it for, deer fat isn't really the best to eat. It's kind of got a bitter taste to it. So I wouldn't really probably cook with it, but you could use it for all kinds of things. You could use it for just anything where you'd use tallow. So you could use it for oil, you could use it to rub on leather or something like that or whatever. In this case I just chucked it out, but it is handy if you save it. But then after you take that fat cap out of there, then you get they have these filters, and it's basically like cheesecloth, but it's in kind of like a cone shape, and you put that into like a cone filter, and you run it through there again cold, and any remaining little fat particles or any remaining little pieces of veggie or something like that will get filtered out, and you basically end up with what they call, like in French cuisine, a consommé, which is essentially a very clear, not cloudy at all, just like nice, perfectly crystal clear bone broth. And this stuff is awesome. I made 2.5 gallons of it, and I just packaged it up in these things and froze them. And it's great, like I said, soups, gravies. You could boil that down further, and basically that's like the base for demi-glace. So if you just reduce that more and it thickens more, it turns into demi-glace. So it's awesome for steaks or whatever. But it's a great way to use up the bones and use up like every part of the animal, which I like to try and do. So that's this is where I'm going to start out. I'm going to chop up my veggies, and then we'll get going on this. Okay, so I got all my veggies cut up. And then I got my beans draining here. You want to rinse these off with some cold water and drain them out. Always want to rinse them. And then over here, I got the meat just browning down. So I got nothing special going on here yet. I just put, so far, just the sausage and the ground venison, that's all. I got my braised stuff, that's already cooked, so that can go in kind of at the end. But nothing crazy here. I didn't put any oil or anything like that, just dry pan, got it hot, threw the sausage in there, the fat. The venison's going to be pretty lean, it's got a little bit of fat in there, but the sausage is obviously going to be fattier. So I'm getting a little bit of oil in there from that, so you don't want to add any additional oil. And then just a little salt and pepper, and that's it so far. We'll season everything else up when we throw the veggies in. I'm just going to let this brown down real good and break it up. See, this is all still frozen here, so I'll bust it up a little bit. Let it brown on down. Okay, so I ended up having to split this up into 2 pans here because it was getting pretty full. But I'm just going to do the same thing in both. So I just threw in a little bit of paprika and some bay leaf, and then all my veggies. So I'm just sweating all the veggies down. Oh, I threw in the ground meat, or the braised meat too. You can see that in there. So now I got all my meat browned up, and I got these veggies basically just sweating down. I threw a little bit of Worcestershire sauce in there, and you can see I'm getting a little bit of liquid in the bottom of the pan. That's mostly fat, but a little bit of rendered water from the veggies. A lot of people will tell you to throw that away, to drain that out, because it'll make a grease layer on the top of your finished product, which it could. Actually, it probably will. But there's a way better way to do that, because that's all just like great flavor. And you don't want to throw all that out, just throw it away. So what we're going to do later on, after I sweat these up a little bit more, I'm going to throw just a little bit of flour in here and make a roux out of all that fat. Roux is basically, it's a French word for flour mixed with butter. Or it could be oil or any type of fat, so this fat will work just fine. And what that'll do later on, it, number one, preserves all that flavor in there so you don't throw it away. And then number two, it'll act as a thickening agent. So don't dump that fat out, leave it in there. So now I'm just going to do the fun part, the seasoning up. So let's do that. And this is all, at your discretion. This is the chili powder. I already put a little bit of paprika in there. So you start out with a little. You can always add more seasoning. You don't want to over season to start with chili. I know this is a little untraditional. I put a little thyme and rosemary in mine. The rosemary I chopped up with the veggies already, so that's already in here. There's a little thyme. Cumin. This is important. You gotta have some cumin in there. That's what gives it that nice chili flavor. So a good amount of that. Okay. Paprika I already threw in there, so I won't do that again. This is some coriander. Not a ton, just a little dash of that. Good. Already got my bay leaves in there. And then this is, of course, some cayenne pepper for some heat. And you can use anything, you could throw up chop up some jalapenos and throw those in there, or serrano chilies or anything like that would be good. I like it pretty warm, but the cayenne pepper is pretty potent, so I'm going to rock with this for now. Let's see how it looks after that. You can always season more. You can't take the seasoning out, so just throw a little in at a time and kind of season it up to your taste. It's starting to sweat down good. So at this point, now that it's starting to render a lot of that liquid out, I'm going to stir the seasoning in, and then I'm probably going to go ahead and throw a little bit of flour. It doesn't need to be a lot, maybe a half a cup or so. And that's just going to kind of soak up all that juice so we don't end up throwing it away. So let this render down a little bit more. Let those seasonings start to sink in. And then we'll start our roux. Okay, so I consolidated back into one pot because I realized I was going to just barely be able to make it fit. And then I threw in, I did a little bit more cumin and a little bit more chili powder. I threw in my diced tomatoes. I drained those out. You can leave them wet if you want. I just drained them. And then I threw in 1 can of pureed tomato. In this case, actually, I had crushed tomato. They didn't have any puree. That would have been preferable, but I'll just throw the crushed in there. That's fine. So then what's going to happen after you do that, ideally, the tomatoes are going to give you a little bit of an acidy flavor sometimes. So a good way to cut that is just a teeny tiny bit of sugar. Like usually when I make marinara sauce, I'll put a little pinch of sugar in there. I don't have any sugar today, so I'm going to skip that. But at this point I would usually, I mean, I'm just talking like a 1/4 of a teaspoon or something like that, like not much at all. Just enough to cut that acid. But I think I tasted it and I think it's going to be okay. The venison's kind of a little bit sweet actually, so that's going to help kind of cut that acid down. And then right here I threw in my my venison stock that I was talking about, the bone stock. And I actually, because it was a little not very watery, you kind of want this watery at this point because you're going to let this just simmer down for a long time. So I actually thawed out just real quick out of the freezer. I just thawed it out just enough to get another block out of there, and threw that guy in there. And this is another great thing about this stuff too. You can work with it basically straight from frozen. I just ran it under some hot water real quick, just enough to get it out of the container, and threw it in there as a whole ice block like that, and that'll just thaw out in your sauce or soup or whatever you're making, and then it'll just incorporate all that flavor into there. So I've got 2 whole. There was one originally that I had thawed out, and I poured that in there, and then I threw another one in there. So I got 2 floating around in there now. Now at this point, everything is pretty much in there except for the kidney beans. You could throw them in now, but they're basically fully cooked already. And I find that if you put them in before you do the long part of the cooking process, which is coming up now, they'll start to deteriorate and kind of fall apart and stuff. So I usually wait till kind of closer to the end to throw those in. So at this point, basically everything's in there. I've seasoned it up. And then I'm just gonna let this super slow roll. I got the heat basically as low as it'll go. And then I'm just gonna let this simmer for probably a few hours. And just low and slow. The longer you let it go, the better. It's just gonna kind of let all those flavors settle. The tomatoes will break down. So I'll come back to you in probably a couple hours. It'll be time to throw the beans in and give it a stir, and then it'll be pretty much done. Now's a good time to taste it, but which it does taste pretty good. But keep in mind, when it simmers for a long time, I mean, what it tastes like now is not necessarily what it's going to taste like. So if you don't feel like it's salty enough or something like that, maybe hold off, let it cook for a little bit, and let the flavors all kind of congeal together, and then give it another taste as you go down the road. Alright guys, I'm back. It's been about 2 hours now since I put everything in and just kind of let this slow roll. And this is basically what you want right here, just a very slow, just a slow simmer like that. Because what's going to happen, you can kind of see there's a lot of liquid up here on the top. And then when I kind of stir this up, all your meat and goodies and stuff kind of sinks down to the bottom. So the big thing here, you just don't want to, and I should have stressed this more, but you don't want to scorch it, because that'll, if it burns to the bottom, it'll just make your whole chili just kind of have a burnt flavor like that. So I'm using this rubber tip spatula that I'm pretty much using for everything, but this is great because I can get down in here and just kind of scrape this along the bottom and knock all the stuff off of here. And this is a non-stick pan too, so that helps a lot too, but just keep the stuff from cooking down onto the bottom too hard. So maybe like every 15-20 minutes I'd come over here and just give this a little wiggle, just like this, and just kind of move things around a little bit. But as you saw when I first came over here and stirred this up, your liquid will kind of come up to the top. So eventually here I may end up just thickening this up a little bit. I might make a little cornstarch slurry and just hitting it with a little bit of that to thicken it up. But the taste is awesome. I mean, it's really good. You can see there's hardly any fat rolling up to the top because that roux incorporated it all. The flavors are really good. It's got a little bit of heat to it, but it's not too overwhelming. The only thing that I added, because I tasted it probably about an hour ago, and it had a little bit of bite from the tomatoes, like the acidy part of the tomato, where I was kind of saying I'd normally put a little bit of sugar in there. So because I didn't have any sugar, I just added just a pinch of coarse ground kosher salt. And you gotta be careful with that stuff because it's really salty, like a little. I mean, I probably put less than a quarter of a teaspoon in there, just a pinch of it. And not even really because I wanted the dish to be any saltier, but I just wanted to break that acid taste of the tomato down just a little bit. I was just getting a little kind of ketchupy sort of bite to it from the tomato, so just that little tiny pinch of salt kind of helped take care of that and mellow it down a little bit, so that's good. But at this point, I don't think I'm going to season this anymore. I mean, it's tasting pretty much exactly where I want it to be. At this, you know, if you want a little lighter on the seasoning in the beginning, and you get down to it now, and you know maybe it's just needs a little hair more salt, or you know a little hair more heat or something like that, you can always add a little more. But it sucks. You don't want to salt it up too much in the beginning, and then you keep adding seasoning when you first put it in the pot, and then you let it cook for 2 hours, and all of a sudden all those flavors kind of blossom out, and then oh man, it's really seasoned, it's too salty. So low and slow, just a little bit of seasoning in the beginning, and then just kind of slowly work it in, add as you go. Right about now, probably what I'll do is add my kidney beans soon, and I'll let this cook down, reduce a little bit more, probably let it go for another, I don't know, 30 minutes or maybe another hour. Just kind of take it down a little bit. At this point, it is a little bit thinner. This is also kind of discretionary too. I mean, I could probably just cut it off now and it'd be okay, but it's a little on the thin side for me. I like my chili a little bit less watery, a little less soupy, more kind of hearty. So I'm going to try and cook a little bit more of the water out of it, but I don't want to take too much of the water out, because as it reduces down, it's also going to get it will get more seasoned as the water boils out. So I don't want to take too much out and have it get salty. So that's, in that case, we may employ a little bit of the cornstarch. So I'll probably let this run for another half hour or so, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the cornstarch slurry process. That'll just kind of help thicken it up, and we'll throw the beans in, and that should pretty much be that. It'll be ready to go. Okay guys, it's been about another hour-ish, maybe another 50 minutes, but we're pretty much at the finish line here. I threw my kidney beans in there. I've just kept this moving and cooking down. There's still a little bit of liquid on top. You can see it's really starting to bubble, and you know, you can just kind of hear that it's thicker. See that it's thickening up pretty good, but just to thicken it up just a tad bit more. And I don't really want to have this cooked down too much more here, because it's pretty much, I mean, it tastes great. The flavor is really good. It tastes awesome. So what I'm going to do now, just because I want it a tiny bit thicker, I made a little cornstarch slurry. And this is essentially just half cornstarch and half butter. And you're going to whisk it together, and it kind of should be about heavy cream consistency, so a little thicker than milk. So I'm going to add that in. You want to kind of do this slow, because this stuff will thicken it right up, so I'm not even going to add all of it. And then you're just going to kind of whisk that in there. And you can almost see immediately where I whisk that in that's really starting to tighten up already. You could actually make a little bit more roux on the side too if you want. I could take a pan, melt a little bit of butter, throw a handful of flour in there, and mix it in there, and roux it up that way if you wanted to, and use that for more thickening agent. But this way also works nice. It's nice and fast. And that's, you can see right away, that stuff pretty much tightened it right up. So maybe just one more little shot of this. You got to kind of be careful with this stuff. I mean, in a big pot like this, it's not too bad. If you're making a small pot of something, just little small amounts, number one, because it's, I mean, you can see how quickly that acts. It really tightens it up fast. And then also, once this cools down, it'll take effect even more, and it'll really tighten it up even more. And then also, if you go too crazy with the cornstarch, this little teeny tiny bit that I put in there, you barely even taste it at all. But if you put a ton in there, you will get a little bit of it. It almost kind of has like a little bit of a chalky taste to it. So you don't want to go too wild with the cornstarch, but I think that's pretty much perfect right there. And you can see that that's really sticking onto my whisk pretty good. And you can see this just has like a lot nicer, thicker, kind of more body to it now. So what I'll do is probably let this maybe go for another 5 more minutes, just to kind of let that cornstarch cook down so it doesn't stay raw in there. Let it finish thickening up. But that is pretty much it. We got nice thick, good chili. But most importantly, get a little taste here. Oh, it tastes great. Really, really good. So that's about it. I'm gonna let this cook for, like I said, 5-10 more minutes. Probably turn the heat off, just let it cool down on its own, and then I'll put it in the fridge, cool it down overnight. This freezes great. You can just put it into like Ziploc bag and suck all the air out of it, or you can put it like in the little plastic containers, and you can just thaw them out. You can throw them in some warm water or something and thaw it out, or even you can just reheat it right from frozen. I've just cut if you do a Ziploc bag, just cut the bag off and throw it right in a pot, dead ass frozen, and turn it on low heat and warm it back up. It's a great like lunch snack or something. I'll take them to work. I'm actually going to a potluck next weekend, so I'll be bringing this, probably about half of this with me, and then the rest of it I'll probably just package up and I'll keep it for lunches or bring it down to the cabin for deer camp this year or whatever. But yeah, this is pretty much it. This is the, for me, I love getting out in the woods and doing the hunting and doing all that stuff and processing the deer and cutting my own meat and all that stuff. So this is kind of like the culminating experience here, is to, be able to make something nice and bring it to a potluck, or, have lunch for yourself, or share it with your friends or your family, or whatever the case may be. It's just great to be able to, harvest your own food and bring it in out of the woods. It's clean. It's not full of antibiotics and crap. It didn't spend its whole life in a pen. Just food that you can feel good about, and that that you harvested yourself and you worked hard for. And the best part is it tastes great. So thanks for watching this, guys. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, just leave a comment on here, or I'm on the Bow Hunters of America Facebook group if you want to shoot me a message on there. But otherwise, I hope you guys use this recipe. Just check it out. It's really good. And thanks again for watching. Take care.